So today we're going to be talking about establishing your product's focus order. And before we jump in, I want to give you a little bit of a insight into the agenda itself and what we're going to be discussing. So first and foremost, we're going to start with a definition of what is focus. And after we understand a little bit of what it is and what we can compare it to in terms that are easy to understand, we'll also cover some of the recommendations and thought processes behind thinking and establishing a focus order. I'm going to be challenging some of the patterns that we have created over the years that don't necessarily, meet all of the requirements, and I'll go through a few examples on that. I'm gonna jump out of the presentation for a little bit, and we're actually gonna be looking at the browser and my phone, and I'm gonna be using a keyboard to navigate on those and give you a little bit of insight on how you can actually use a Bluetooth keyboard of some sort to test your experiences as your developers produce builds. And then I'm going to jump into an actual demo of a brand new feature that we have released. I think it was last week. I can't keep up. We've been releasing a lot of stuff called Focus Order. Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to be giving a demo and a couple of different scenarios and how to think about how to use the tool first and foremost, but how to think about your designs as you use the tool. And then finally, I actually mentioned this and I have it towards the end on how to test, but I'll probably cover that as I go when I'm putting examples up on my screen in terms of web and mobile. If I do miss it and keep going, then we'll come back to it at the end. Yeah, and let's start with a definition, shall we? What exactly is focus? And focus is a state, right, of interactive elements. So the interactive being the keyword there, when it's highlighted and awaiting a user's input. And my friend Claudio, I don't know if he's actually joining us today, but my friend Claudio offered a really, really good example that I could instantly relate to, which is using my remote for operating a smart TV, operating Netflix or something like that. And you'll see here to the right, you'll see on American Barbecue Showdown that it has sort of like a cursor drawn around it, and it's literally awaiting for my input. If I press on OK on my remote, it'll go into the detail view of that show, or it will start playing depending on where I am. But if I move left and right, the content itself will shift focus, and it'll be highlighted, basically letting me as a user know, like, hey, I'm ready for you. What do you want me to do? Now, focus is very much a UX issue and something that as UX designers, as developers, we have to constantly be thinking about because, and I just mentioned in this example of using a smart TV, your input device is different than, for example, when you have a hover state because you're using a mouse and you can freely roam, the entire UI. So we have to be very, very conscious of how people access our experiences, right? When you think about users who are affected by focus order, are primarily people that are using a keyboard to navigate, are using, oh my God, the name escaped me all of a sudden. Oh.
Sip and puff.
Sip and puff. Oh my goodness. I've been talking about this all day and I can't believe I just, thank you so much for coming to my rescue. Device or other assistive devices, and even screen readers. Users are moving from one active element to the next throughout your UI. So you have to be, again, as a designer or as a developer, you have to be very, very conscious as to how that content is organized how does somebody traverse through that intended experience that you have for them. And W3C actually tells us to ensure that when users navigate sequentially, they encounter information that is consistent with the meaning of the content. So there's an emphasis on what they're trying to do through this experience. As they traverse this experience, everything sort of makes sense. It adds to the meaning of the content itself. And they mention it can be operated from a keyboard. Obviously there's more nuances to this. A keyboard is just one of the devices that our experiences should be able to support if we are aiming at being, completely accessible and really servicing, offering products and services to all users, all humans, as opposed to just a selected few or privileged few or something, whatever you may want to call them, right? And the way to typically think about this is using the DOM, or document object model. And this is really language independent. And it's really how the architecture of your HTML or your XML or anything else that is dictating kind of like the order of elements and from top to bottom. And this is really just like the stack of elements. There's also semantic structure, and this is much more about the content and being able to say, well, these are my headlines, right? And this is H1 followed by H2, and then my body copy, and how somebody traverses or is able to consume that content from top to bottom. And this is purely, it says right here in the definition that styling is changed for readability purposes, but that doesn't mean that the ID that it's being used is changed in that regard. It means that, everything has to flow consistently. And while this makes sense on paper, obviously there's I'm oversimplifying it here by just offering the top level definition. One thing that we have to think about is that over the years, we have not only changed input devices. So if you're a UX designer like myself, I entered, and I've shared this before, I entered the industry at a very transformative time where the App Store was launched. So people started building apps for iOS, but it was really the first time, even though devices existed like this prior, it just became very, very popular. It sort of exploded in popularity, and people were designing finally experiences for direct input, sort of like touchscreen gestures and manipulation of the UI directly with your fingers, almost trying to mimic what it's like to have a physical object in front of you, but in a flat screen that didn't, before haptics or anything like that, didn't really have any tactile feedback other than I'm touching a piece of glass, right? I always use this analogy when describing innovation, is that if you went back to 2006 and you asked anybody on the planet, what is the perfect phone? Nobody would have replied, a glass brick with no buttons. It was just sort of, so a new language and new new parameters had to be developed for this new thing. And I was, again, talking about myself. I started designing for iOS, but I was already designing for BlackBerry that were in landscape format, that had a click wheel or a click ball in order to navigate things. Again, thinking about focus order, how do you traverse, you have a click ball that moves 360 degrees on like a mouse, sort of old mice up and down scroll wheel. But still, there are certain limitations that as a designer or as a developer, you have to be thinking, how are people actually using this? So with time, I think we have created certain patterns that sort of defy for the convenience of certain users, or just the nature of how we are evolving in terms of digital experiences with heavy content and stuff like that. We have developed new patterns that I would say challenge to a certain extent what these principles dictate, right? When you think about infinite scrolling, and there's so much debate about infinite scrolling versus pagination and stuff like that. And even though we can we can talk about it forever in terms of dribble. You know, when you look at something like YouTube or Instagram, how do you mitigate a constant feed of things that are updating in real time? Do we invent new patterns and retroactively, or not retroactively, invent new patterns, but also think about how to make those new patterns accessible? Or do we deny the technology altogether, right? And say like, this is not convenient to think about right now. And I think we cannot think that way, you know. Other things are floating action buttons. So because of the nature of the screens that we're designing for, which are in portrait mode, and with phone sizes ever increasing, we're being told, hey, put things close to the bottom of the screen, where it's closer to your thumb and stuff like that for easier access. But guess what? If you're looking at the DOM, now you have to contextualize the Z index or something that is floating on top of everything else. So when you're determining focus order, is the floating action button the last thing that you land on and that you highlight or focus on? Or is it the first thing? Because arguably, if you think about Twitter, for instance, it is the primary action that you're supposed to take in that entire experience. Things like pull to refresh that rely heavily on being able to do gestures and drag the screen downwards. It also assumes that you're all the way at the top instead of being able to refresh from anywhere. Carousels that typically have content that falls outside of the screen. And like I said, screen sizes, resolutions, what's landscape, portrait, etc. I think as designers and engineers, these are things that make us challenge. And I'll back up again. Let me see. Can I back up? No. Oh, there we go. Yeah, when we're looking at, again, at the way that we build HTML interfaces, at the way that we design for semantic structure, certain things are gonna challenge how we approach this. Understanding the technology is also important. So as a user, I may not always be like pressing tab, tab, tab on my keyboard. I may be using a combination of a screen reader with my headphones, and I'm actually developing muscle memory, moving my finger across the UI, and the UI is being read back to me. So if I discover that this is the button to tweet, I already know where it is. And it doesn't matter that if I'm, compared to when I'm tabbing through content, using the same experience, right? Using a screen reader. Anyway, so with that said, I'm gonna actually let's go into demo time. I'm gonna pull up a few examples that I was just looking through, and I think they really highlight some of what I'm mentioning already. So I have Google Chrome. And hopefully, can I get a thumbs up again from someone if you can still see my screen? All right, yep. Awesome. Thank you so much. I have Google Chrome, and in Google Chrome, please don't judge how many extensions and stuff I have. I am able to simply let me actually refresh this and ensure that I'm in the right place. I'm actually just able in a website like Sketches, I'm able to press tab, and now you'll see that I have a button that says skip navigation, at which point I don't think this is working as intended potentially, but when I hit skip navigation, it means that if you see the URL, I don't know if you can see this, but it changed to content, but it didn't really move on my screen. So if I still continue to press tab, it's still gonna go through the navigation. But that's skip navigation is a tool at our disposal that we could use so that we're not forcing people necessarily to go through this. And I'm using my keyboard and sort of tabbing. I am not able to use my arrow keys specifically on this website. But I can tab through, and this is my open sub navigation, right? And I can press escape to sort of like close it up. and again, tab to continue moving through the content. And as you can tell, some of those, like this orange button, because I have an orange highlight on my computer, it's kind of like too subtle. They draw a shadow behind it, and now continuing to press tab is kind of like moving through the content. And now I'm down here, it's moving down, learn more, browse extension, etc. So I rely on this to sort of traverse through the content, and you see that I have a bunch of stuff in my footer. If I do shift tab, it actually moves backwards and whatnot. And we can continue to cycle through like that. Somebody like Stripe, which I'm a big fanboy over here. I mean, I feel like I just love so much of what they do. That's my own personal opinion. I can tab through, and they do a lot of these mega menus, right? And with mega menus, you have the challenge of housing so much content down there. I feel like they're doing a lot right when it comes to these, because they have visual aids like little iconography to kind of like distinguish the different things, even if that iconography is not too representation. They're more like logos, because they don't necessarily represent the word that they're describing, but at least you develop some sort of association. And in here, what's interesting is I can not only tab, which will take me to the next one, but I can use my arrow to go up and down. And this is going to cycle through, again, thinking about what we were talking about before in terms of the structure of this. It's cycling through the content on this. Similar to the previous example, I can press escape and keep tabbing, and that's going to take me through the different links and everything throughout the website, and shift tab will take me back up, right? Then this one is a really, really cool example, not only because I was reading about and watching this video. This video is amazing, by the way. I shared it with my team on Slack, so if anybody wants to post it in the chat, that would be amazing. But it's basically how the sip and puff came to be in this context. And anyway, look at the video. It's pretty awesome. But basically, this guy had to learn Morse code, and he was sipping and puffing, translating that Morse code, and his cousin developed the technology that would translate that Morse code into typed text on a screen, just so that this guy could communicate with the people around him right after an accident he had. Anyway, going through the menu here, what's really, really cool, let me refresh this again, just to make sure that I'm at the top. What's really, really cool is that I'm cycling through kind of like that header section above the top navigation. But as you'll see, once I get to the top navigation, it's giving me the actual instructions. I don't know how necessary this is for absolutely everyone, but for somebody like me, in the context of learning, I've never used something like this before, and I haven't had to rely on this way of navigating. This was super helpful, and in fact, everything that I mentioned on the other websites was by reading, doing research, and this little instruction blurb was the best thing that I could find to be like, oh, okay, I get it, So that was pretty cool. If you don't rely on keyboard navigation, but you want to test, the UI that you're putting together, the websites that you're putting together, which I encourage you to do. This is going to be crucial for you to learn kind of like these functions and everything else. Once you're, and it goes through the rest of everything else. I'll jump forward. So I mentioned Netflix at the beginning, and unfortunately, one thing that Netflix does not offer, so I'm cycling with tab at the top, and pretty cool. I can go through most things. Two things. Once I get to the thumbnails, they don't have, other than like a quick I mean, it's so small that I wouldn't blame you if you don't notice it at all. It sort of like grows in size, but literally like by 0.5%. And even more than that, you would have a hard time even seeing that the arrow to, sorry, let me get this out of the way, that the arrow is actually being highlighted at any given point, in essence, to be able to move forward in or backwards in these carousels. So again, this is another convention or pattern that I sort of challenged before, because if we think about our users, not everybody's gonna have content is for everyone. Not everybody's gonna have a mouse or a way to directly manipulate the content. They may need to be able to highlight that, and that highlight or that focus needs to be very, very visible. And this experience is actually, let's say, not ideal enough so that somebody actually created their own Chrome extension, just so that you can actually highlight the content and see exactly how you're navigating. So, I thought it was pretty remarkable that somebody kind of like stepped up to the plate to do that. Now, that's how you test on Chrome. You just use the tab keys on your keyboard, and you're able to move around. By default, Safari is slightly different. So by default in Safari, you have to do, I believe it's Option tab in order to be able to tab through things. Option Shift tab to move backwards, and it's because accessibility by default is turned off. So in order to actually turn that on, I would have to go to my Safari preferences and move over here to advanced, and then under accessibility, you would turn this on, the press tab highlight, to highlight. And now, I'm able to only press tab, just like I would on Chrome. So just one of those things. And I remember it back, a few months ago, me commenting to one of my developers, hey, it's working in Chrome, but it's not working in Safari. And they actually told me about this. So big egg on my face. And then finally, this one will require a little bit of finicking, but I'm gonna do something a little bit risky and show you my actual phone screen. So please bear with me. I'm gonna show you this for a couple of reasons. So this is, mind you, I'm on an iOS device. It's just customized because reasons. But this is my iOS device, and if you can look at my thumbnail, I'm actually gonna be using my one of my Mac wireless keyboard. So I'm actually gonna turn that on, and in my phone, I'm gonna go to Bluetooth. I'm gonna go to Bluetooth, and I'm gonna make sure that my keyboard is turned on. I don't know what kind of like personal information I'm sharing here, so please don't look at anything. I'm gonna go down to accessibility, and within accessibilities, I'm gonna scroll down to keyboards. Once I'm on keyboard, I'm gonna press full keyboard access and turn that on, and you'll see that now I have a highlight in my content area, right? So now when I go to an app, oh my goodness, please be something normal. When I go to something like Instagram, I can see that, for example, by pressing tab on my keyboard, now you can see the Instagram, not only the area highlighted, but the Instagram logo sort of highlighted. And this works slightly different, because this is really rich in terms of content. We have a tree structure, meaning that this is not only something that I can tap through, but it's something that I can actually use my arrow keys, because how would you otherwise allow people to sort of like move down something that is actually infinite. So I'm using my arrow keys to move up and down. I like this, so I can use my arrow keys again to, I want to live my life. I can stand behind that. So I can go down and go to the heart and press my space bar, and that's actually gonna like the content. If I want to go down to the tab navigation, and we had somebody in our Slack channel join if you haven't already. We had somebody ask, how do I access that bottom navigation in an app such as this one? So the way to do it is I press tab to sort of like reset back to the top, and I do shift tab, which is now going to take me down to the bottom navigation. And arguably somebody that relies on this as a way to navigate their device would know this. But again, me being a newcomer, and potentially you, if you haven't tried this before, this is the way of actually navigating through things. So it's a little bit different than how you would do it on a browser, because generally, things are richer in nature. And again, pressing spacebar will take me to everywhere else. So with that being said, that's the end of that demo. I'm actually going to jump into Sketch now and show you a couple of different scenarios and how the brand new focus order feature that we launched actually works. Please ignore my missing fonts, and I truly hope that this doesn't cause any issues. I didn't have missing fonts before. When you look at, can you all see okay? Thumbs up, anyone? Yeah? All right, cool. I'm gonna make it full screen nonetheless, just in case. I have two screens here to the left that have exactly the same information. There are a couple ways that I can, if I'm trying to imagine how to use this, there's a few things that I can do. So I'm gonna go up to plugins. I'm gonna go to Stark, and I'm gonna pull up Focus Order. Focus Order is gonna bring up this nifty little UI. And because I'm dealing with the welcome screen, I'm gonna create a new sequence for the entire screen. This is a fairly simple screen. So I'm gonna call that new sequence welcome, just like my screen. When I create it, this moves over to focus items. And what this allows me to do is I can now click on different layered items. And let me show you real quick. So like, let's say I have this pagination dot, right? And I want to add that as my first focus item. I select it in my layers and I click add. And you see how now it has pagination dot one, pagination dot two, pagination dot three, pagination dot four, and create an account and sign in. There's nothing inherently wrong with what I just did, right? I'm allowing a person to go through this, go through the slides, read the copy, and go down to create an account or sign in, giving them the option to do that. However, if a person is already familiar with this product and they already have an account and they just got a new device and they've installed it, they just want to sign in, I made them go through 5 different steps of stuff that they already knew before getting to the place where they wanted to get to in the first place. So I'm looking at my alignment issues too. Please ignore that. So I'm going to start a new sequence. And this time I'm going to start a new sequence for this other welcome screen. So let's call this welcome screen or welcome alt. Just an alternate version of that. And this is where I want to treat basically this top section, thinking again about how we navigated Instagram, where you're actually using your arrow keys to navigate kind of like the carousels. This top section, I can treat it as one focusable element. So I can say, this is my illustration portion, or actually, let me rename it and say that this is my tutorial. I know how to type. This is my tutorial. And then I go down to create account, and then I go down to sign in. So when I communicate with my engineers who are building this, and I provide with these annotations, which, as you can see here, when I'm generating them, it's actually creating a new folder here at the top that I can always turn off and turn on at the moment that I'm handing these off to my engineers. I'm gonna lock that up again. I can tell them, hey, rather than doing these, going one by one, thinking about the user intention and kind of like how everything is structured, why don't we do this? And now we got them there in half the amount of steps. If you think about something bigger, I'm actually not going to go through this other one because this one is fairly simple. But when you think about this in a UI that has a lot more content, this could have huge implications. So let's go over to example number 2, which I have over here. And I would do something like this to really organize my way of thinking. If you look at this UI, I have some sticky components. So this header area is sticky. I obviously have my tab navigation at the bottom, which is sticky. So this is very much a similar example to how Instagram behaves. Now, different than Instagram, I have, instead of having stories here across the top, I have these on-off switches, right? Of like filters that are gonna refresh the content that people see underneath. And for all of my The Office fans, if I have any, I on purpose only chose restaurants from The Office to populate this information. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my sequences and thinking about this, my top navigation is going to be a tree component, meaning that I can move back and forth with my arrows. All of my content is going to be another tree component. And then my tab bar is going to be a tab component that I can sort of like move across. So again, I'm going to say this is going to be my, what is this? Feed, my feed page. Feed because it's a feed, and feed because I'm about to be fed by some of this. Sorry, that joke. I'm gonna add this whole thing at the top as a single focusable element. And again, this is where my communication with my developer beyond this documentation is gonna play a crucial role, because now I can say, that this area at the top, sorry, I did something unintentional. Let me backtrack. Instead of building the entire feed, within the feed, I want to say that I'm going to create something called my top navigation. And within my top navigation, I have a few elements. I have my search. So this is going to be search, right? And then I have my filters. And when I communicate with my developers, I can let them know that this area over here, this entire sequence that I've called top navigation is a tree component, meaning that people can move, up, down, left, and right. If they tab over, then they would go through this content area, which again, will take them through the different tiles. Some of these, I don't have them here in view, but some of these actually fall off the screen. So people would be able to not only focus on one, but similar to the carousel example, sort of like navigate through, etc. And then very similar to Instagram, I would have my tab bar sequence. And when I create that, now I'm going to add, delivery being one of them. I should have grouped these I can do it on the fly, right? Command G. So this is gonna be my delivery. Oops. Pick up, and you get the gist. You know that this now becomes kind of like the I did something wrong. I actually focused on the entire thing, but you get what I mean. So now this is actually composed of 3 different sequences, 2 of which are tree components. And now, because I've annotated all of these, when I'm doing the handoff process, I can tell my developers this is exactly the expectation that I have when thinking and creating this UI with sort of like sticky components. Now, not everything is going to be, this is complex, but certain things are going to be very, very complex. This is a typical homepage for an offering, right? And if you look at, let me get rid of this for a second. If you look at this, you have your top navigation, which goes across the top. You have your hero section, which if we start counting the interactive elements, you have a button, you have 3 more icons down here. Then you have carousels, which arguably are not only slides, but you could potentially go into every single one of these. So you have a ton of focusable elements. In fact, I try to do my best to sort of count and assume how many these are in this UI kit. And I was able to count in this screen alone over 80 different focusable elements. So if I am a person that is navigating through all of this with a keyboard, it's going to be exhausting before I get down to what if I'm interested in countries we covered all the way down here, and I'm trying to look for maybe something else in Europe which is not represented here. So I have to come all the way down here and sort of be able to tab across. Obviously, the tab, just tabbing won't suffice. So we, similar to the example that I post from the Sketch website, I need to look for one that is actually working. But when you come here, imagine if you can plan your content to say like, hey, people should be able to focus on this area entirely as a sequence, but they should be able to skip it and skip to the next. And once I land on the one that I'm actually interested on, then I'm tabbing on that one and being like, yep, this is exactly what I wanted to discover. So again, this is yet another example of how that how to approach your designs and think about how are people actually navigating this if they don't have a mouse, if they're not tapping on the screen directly with their finger. How hard am I making it for them to access the number 1 priority that this screen function feature has? We're constantly challenged again by some of the patterns that I mentioned. So that's something to think about and to really plan. Obviously, I wanna share with you some key takeaways. Again, as you design and build, think about how people use your products. Don't assume that they have access to what you maybe intended. Try to look at the general population. How can everybody use this, not just some, right? Engage your engineers, communicate with them, agree on how you're sharing documentation and annotations with them, and also be flexible because again, if we go back to the whole DOM and semantics, it may be that there are some technical challenges achieving what you want to achieve. So this tool that I've demoed today actually helps you engage in those conversations and really think, and brainstorm with your team. How might we make this happen in a way that it's best for our users? Document your expectations. I think the days of when we used to send a flat JPEG and expect everybody to build it and be perfect are long, long gone. The days of having to do things by hand are also long gone. We have tools, plugins, and shout out to Stark. But we have plugins that help us, create that documentation and engage in those conversations, and definitely test your work. So as your engineers are producing builds or your website is being published and everything, try to go through it a bunch of times. Try to maybe engage with people that have to traverse experiences using assistive devices, using their keyboard, using screen readers, etc., and learn from that and try to think about that as you move forward in your designs. So anyway, I'm about to wrap it up. I can't believe I am so exact on the amount of time that I'm actually proud of myself. But I want to tell you that focus order, which is what I demoed here towards the end, is available now. So if you go to Figma or Sketch, you can go to the Start plugin and you'll see focus order there as one of your options. Adobe XD, I've been told that it's coming soonish. We'll have to create a definition of what that is, but we'll wait for it. But in the meantime, and it's not that we don't want to do it. We can go into that later. but Sketch and Figma are already available. You can find more information at getstart.co. I wouldn't be doing my job correctly if I didn't tell you to follow us absolutely everywhere on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram at GetStartCo, and join our Slack channel, just because if you're not there already, it's not even us. We just have this beautiful, bustling community of people truly helping each other out, learning from each other. It's just, for me, it's a daily source of inspiration, just seeing the conversations that unravel there, and we gain a lot of clarity just by reading people's perspectives and everything else. So if you are not there already, be sure to join, and we'll see you there. And with that, I am wrapping up. Anybody from the team want to share anything else, or
yeah, I'm happy to just say something real quick. I know that we've gotten quite a number of, so first of all, before I say that, I know there were quite a few questions that came in. Alberto, I know because we're wrapping up on time, you said we're going to take the questions and in turn the answers and bring them over to the Slack community, right?
Slack community. So and Twitter, feel free to engage us on Twitter or the Slack community, and we'll be happy to answer all your questions.
Yeah, I know that Layla and Taylor and Aisha and H had a few questions that we answered them in the chat, I think, to a certain degree, but there were a few questions from Layla and Taylor that went unanswered. But real quick, I just want to say, I know there's quite a number of people that are looking for Stark's focus order feature solution to come to Adobe XD. We are not and have never left Adobe XD out. Adobe is a wonderful partner of ours. We love and I think to a certain degree have a little bit of a bias to XD. Even though we use Figma, there's a soft spot for XD. Unfortunately, as an integration and with what we're doing now and with what's coming, there are limitations to what we can do. The API limitations, and that means constraints. And as a designer, as all of us designers, we know that constraints are our friend. But it's okay. But our job when we put together these solutions for you is to deliver version 1 as the most minimum lovable product for you. And so if we can't guarantee that it is going to really solve your problem, we're not going to ship shit to you. And especially given what we're doing and what we're providing as a solution for you, in your day-to-day workflow. So, we're taking our time with that, making sure the experience is as unified with the rest of the platforms as possible. We have something cooking. I actually saw it yesterday. Yesterday. No set time, because what's coming at the end of the month is absolutely bananas. And that's a priority right now, but it's coming. No set date yet, but yeah, it's coming. Given that, I will hand it back over to Alberto. Thank you, everyone. Again, so so many thanks. This is I think the most exhausting job. What we all collectively do is very tiring, but it's exciting, and I'm having the time of my life, and it's largely in part to everybody in the community, so thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo everything that Kat said. I super appreciate your support and you all being here and learning together. This is truly a great journey for all of us involved and for me personally. I can't wait to engage with you in our different channels. And again, thank you so much for coming today. Peace out.